Hello brothers and sisters, welcome to another episode here on Dangerous African Confessions HD. In this episode we have a conversation with our sister who talks to us about the kind of things she had to see when she was serving a certain prophet in his house. She reveals some deep secrets about the pastor which will amaze you as you listen to her speak about her life in the pastor's house. What really was going on in the pastor's house that our sister has been so terrified to speak about? Let us now go into what our sister has for us today in this very episode. As you know, I plead with you to please subscribe if you haven't done so, and also do like and share this video, so others out there can also benefit from this conversation. And also hit the notification bell, so you will be notified anytime we upload videos.
This is not an easy story for me to tell. In fact, I've spent years running from it, trying to block out the memories of what I witnessed. But today, I can't stay silent anymore. The truth is, I worked for a pastor, a man who presented himself as a servant of God, but who, in reality, was a servant of something far darker. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. When I first agreed to work for Pastor James, I thought I was doing a good thing. A nice, simple job as a housekeeper in a spiritual leader's home, helping out, making a living, and being around people who were close to God. I was just a housekeeper, a regular woman trying to make ends meet, but the things I saw in that house, the rituals I witnessed, they still haunt me to this day. What I didn't know was that I was walking right into the lion's den. You see, you are wondering why I'm saying I walked right into the lion's den. Well, to shock you the more, this isn't just a story about a pastor. It's about the manipulation, the lies, and the darkness that hides behind what seemed like a righteous front. When I was first hired by Pastor James, I thought I was walking into a blessing. His church was one of the largest in the area. He had a reputation for being a miracle worker, someone who could heal the sick and speak in the prophetic utterances. People would line up for hours just to get a glimpse of him or go for what they called special counseling. The first time I walked into his house, I thought it was a dream, grand, filled with expensive furniture, and an aura of something holy. But something about the place didn't feel right. It was like there was a heaviness in the air, as if the walls were holding secrets. I believe you understand what I mean by the walls holding secrets. I was someone who never questioned anything when it comes to pastors and spiritual leaders in general. But at this point in my life, I know better. When I was hired by Pastor James, I was just looking for a steady job. I knew the pastor had a big congregation and was well respected in the community, but I never paid much attention to the rumors about him. Everyone said he was a man of God, a healer, someone who performed miracles. I thought, how lucky am I to work for such an important figure? At first, everything seemed normal. The house was grand, his family kind, and the members of his church were always singing his praises. But there was something off. This thing I noticed way much when I was already in his house. Okay, if that is cool, let me just go straight into what happened in his house. Pastor James was charming, he knew how to make you feel special. He'd greet me every morning with a warm smile, and I'd see his eyes twinkle with an almost unnerving confidence. At first, I assumed it was just his natural charisma. But as time went on, I started noticing things, subtle, but chilling things. It started with the little things, the odd way he spoke during prayers, his presence that seemed almost too powerful. Brother, the first night I spent at the house, I woke up to a loud, rhythmic banging coming from downstairs. I thought it was just the house settling or maybe someone working late. But as I walked down the stairs, I froze. There was no one in the living room, but the room felt charged. You could almost feel the air vibrating. It was as if something was happening, but I couldn't see it. I shook it off and went back to bed, but the next morning, Pastor James acted as if nothing had happened. I remember walking through the house late one night, trying to finish up some chores. That's when I heard strange chanting coming from the basement. It wasn't a prayer I'd ever heard before, and it sent chills down my spine. You see, I tried to shake it off, but every night, there was something new. The way the members of his church looked at him, it wasn't just admiration. It was fear and reverence. I began to feel like I was walking on eggshells. As days turned into weeks, I began to observe strange things during my shifts. Sometimes, the pastor would have late-night visitors, people who looked almost desperate. They'd enter his study, and I'd hear muffled voices, followed by the low hum of chants. At first, I thought it was just him praying with his congregation. But there was something about the voices that wasn't quite right. People would come to him for prayers, desperate for healing, for guidance, but what they didn't know was that those prayers weren't being answered by God. I had at that point begun to assume that it was something else that was using the pastor to work all those miracles. As for the prayers and healings, I started believing that they were being answered by something else. Something darker. Something demonic. Yes, my brother, I saw him one time in action. I mean in the act of his incantation and all that. It wasn't until I saw him in action that I realized the truth. One night, a woman came to him for help. She was crying, begging for her son to be healed. Pastor James told her to kneel, placed his hands on her head, and began to speak in a language I couldn't understand. You see, sometimes you know how your spirit makes you feel there is something off about what you are seeing or witnessing. That is exactly what happened to me. The woman went into a trance-like state, her eyes rolling back into her head, and she started muttering things that didn't make sense at first. But then I saw it. I saw the shadows in the room shift, the temperature drops. And I realized, this wasn't God. This was something evil, something powerful. That was when I realized he was using dark, occult forces to manipulate his followers. There are a lot of things happening, I tell you this on authority. I know what I am talking about. You see, when I saw that, I didn't know what to do. I was terrified. I started hearing whispers in the house, voices telling me to leave, telling me I was in danger. The pastor's power was growing stronger by the day, and I could feel it. I remember one evening, one of these visitors came to the house, another woman, in her early 30s, looking frantic. She said she needed help, that her life was falling apart. Pastor James took her into his office, and I watched from the hallway as the door closed behind them. A few minutes later, I heard a low growl from within. It wasn't a sound I had ever heard before. It didn't belong in a house of worship. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I stayed up, trying to act normal, but I couldn't stop thinking about the growl I'd heard. Around midnight, I decided to sneak downstairs to find out what was going on. As I passed the office door, there is this glass-like window on the other side, so I decided check if I would be able to see what was going on through that. I saw through the crack in the window, a sight I never forget. The woman was kneeling before Pastor James. But she wasn't just praying, her body was convulsing, her eyes rolled back in her head, she had the pastor's manhood in his mouth. As she is doing whatever it is to be done with his thing, she was also muttering something in a language I didn't recognize. Pastor James was standing above her, hands raised high, chanting in a deep, guttural voice. The room felt cold, unnatural. The woman's body jerked in spasms, her skin turning pale, almost translucent. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I was frozen in place, watching as Pastor James began to speak to her. Whatever he was doing, it wasn't prayer. It wasn't healing. It was manipulation. It was power. I heard him say, "You belong to me now. Your soul is mine." One day, I had to clean his study while he was out of the house. I found books hidden behind a pile of scriptures, books with strange symbols, pictures of dark rituals, and references to things I couldn't even pronounce. I must agree that it wasn't proper for me to look through my boss's stuff. That I understand. But something within me pushed me to that without even thinking twice about it. At first, I thought they were just old religious books, but then I realized that the symbols weren't Christian. They weren't even something I knew about. I found one book open on his desk, the pages filled with strange drawings and diagrams for rituals and sacrifices. The more I flipped through those pages, the more I felt like I was stepping into a world I didn't belong in. But it wasn't just the books. It started making all sense to me. You see, it was the way he interacted with his congregation. The last draw where I knew I had to leave the house came when one night, I couldn't hold back my curiosity any longer. I decided to watch him from the hallway as he entered his study. His face was cold, his eyes distant. He began to chant in a language I recognized, only it wasn't the language of God, it was something far darker. As usual, I went and stood at my spot, where I could see what was going on. As he spoke, the room seemed to change, the lights flickered, and I could feel the temperature drop. And that's when I saw it. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to shift, moving as if they had a mind of their own. He wasn't just praying, he was performing a ritual, one that invoked an ancient spirit. The air became thick with an oppressive energy, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I had to get out of there before it consumed me. But before I could, I saw something I couldn't unsee. Pastor James wasn't alone. There were dark figures around him, spirits, or demons, I'm not sure, but they were there, circling him. I began to realize that Pastor James wasn't just using people for his personal gain, he was initiating them into something far more sinister. New members of his congregation were coming to him for help, for healing, but they were unknowingly making a pact with the devil. You see, how he works or manipulates them is that he will start with seemingly innocent prayers, using his charm and promises of miraculous change. But as time went on, he would demand more and more from them, obedience, loyalty, even their souls. One night, Pastor James' most devoted followers came to his house for a special ceremony. He told them it was a spiritual empowerment to help them in their lives. I knew they would be becoming, because he had told me to go to bed early since he was coming to do things in the living room that night. They were so eager to receive his blessing, they didn't hesitate to join. I wasn't supposed to be there, because he felt I wouldn't come out or something like that. I couldn't be in the room again, I decided to come out. That was when I got to see this part of him also. To be honest with you, I don't know why he decided to undertake this thing in his living room. The living room was dimly lit, filled with the scent of incense. The pastor stood in the center, surrounded by his most loyal followers. He began chanting again, and this time, the words were even darker than before. The people were hypnotized, their eyes glazed over, their bodies swaying to the rhythm of the chants. Pastor James held a small, ornate knife in his hand, and as he raised it above his head, I realized what he was about to do. He cut his own palm and allowed the blood to drip onto the floor. Then, he cut the palm of one of his followers, and they knelt, offering their blood as a gift. That's when I understood, this wasn't just a blessing. It was a blood pact. I couldn't take it anymore. I knew I had to leave. But I wasn't sure if I could escape. I had seen too much. Pastor James knew too much about me. You see, anytime it comes to mind that I want to leave, he will call me and tell me no to try to leave his house. Yes, it got to the point where me leaving the house had becoming something he was kind of in a proverbial way telling me I shouldn't dare do. The darkness he wielded wasn't just power, it was control. One evening he called me to the living room, and told me that, he knows I wanted to pull away. He told me that I had seen things I wasn't supposed to see, that if I left, I would suffer the consequences. I never knew he knew I was always watching him do what he was doing all along. He told me everything about me watching him do his things. And he emphasized again that I dare not make an attempt to leave the house. But I was terrified. I knew too much. I couldn't stay. So, to tell you how I left his house, I left in the dead of night, running without looking back. I knew, just like he said, I was going to face the consequences, but I took my own life in my hands and left. To be much honest with you, what I have seen happen to me, you won't believe or understand how I am still here. Whether it was in the design of God or luck, I met this woman after leaving his house. I told her everything with all that I had seen with my eyes and the things the pastor had told me. The woman confirmed it is true and that I needed to undergo cleansing and be more serious with my spiritual life if I wanted a freedom for myself. She has guided me through it all, and I must say that all the things I see when I sleep at night is gradually fading away. But the fear still follows me. I am not completely okay, hence the reason I didn't want to talk about it in the first place. But I hope this opens someone's eyes to think deep about the people they follow out there. It is not what it seems it is. Yes, I know there are equally good men of God out there. But how will you be able to tell, is the question. Because for me, if not for the fact that I worked in his house, I wouldn't believe anything anyone would have told me about him. Be safe and take care.
Don't forget to please subscribe, share and like our videos. Kindly hit the notification bell so you will be the first to get notification to our videos when we upload. First of all, what I want to say is that there are so many pastors out there who claim to speak for God, but how do you know where their power comes from? How do you know that the miracles they perform, the healing they claim, aren't powered by something else? The truth is, many people blindly follow these so-called men of God without ever questioning the source of their powers. They trust them with their lives, their families and even their souls. But just because someone wears a robe and speaks in front of a congregation, doesn't mean their power is divine. Don't put all your trust in pastors or leaders just because of their charisma or reputation. Ask questions. Seek the truth. My thing has always been that, you as the follower deserves to know what you're truly following. In this world where shadows linger alongside light, may we all find our way forward, guided by truth and compassion for ourselves and others. Like I said in our previous episode, my heart aches for those who place their trust in men, believing they are receiving blessings from above when, in truth, they are entangled in a web of darkness. The line between good and evil can blur in our quest for power and recognition. I hope that this will be a lesson etched in the hearts of those who dare to tread the fine line between faith and fanaticism. In the end, this reminds us that while faith can uplift us, it can also lead us down dark paths if we are not careful about whom we choose to follow. If you're in a situation where something doesn't feel right, trust your instincts. And if you're part of a church where you feel like something is wrong, don't be afraid to speak up. The truth will set you free. Don't wait until it's too late. Don't make the same mistake our sister made by staying in the house when she first got the idea that something was off about the pastor. Stay safe. Stay vigilant. And always question the source of power before you place your trust in it. This platform is for us to learn that not everything that claims to be light is light. Be careful where you place your trust. And also seek to associate yourself with genuine people of light. If you've ever been in a similar situation, or if you feel something's not right in your church or community, leave a comment below. Let's talk about it. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more true stories, because sometimes, the scariest things aren't the ones we see, they're the ones we don't.